Hi, my name is Charles Malki, biologist and plant expert with Ivory Organics, where we grow cool plants, and today we're going to be doing the 7-week update. Yes, it's only been 7 weeks since we grafted our peach, plum, and apricot onto a plum rootstock, and we're going to see the results. We're actually going to sever what was once an approach graft and actually watch that scion wood, that grafted wood, now rest, and we're going to do a stress test on it together. But before we do, I want to share this quick quote by William Kent, who says, "Garden as though you will live forever." And what's so special about that is when it comes to grafting, it's a patient project. It's something that is going to take at least a year to maybe 3 years to still enjoy fruit, but you're going to end up having something that is a proven winner, selected among thousands, if not tens of thousands of other fruit trees, and bringing that into your garden. And again, what we've created by doing a 3-in-1, which will ultimately become a 10-in-1 or even more fruit trees all on one tree, is I'm going to get to enjoy the flavors of many trees in the space of just one. And that's the power and the value of grafting. And let's get started now. So just 7 weeks ago, we started off with our plum tree and we pruned it down to just about ground level and allowed the suckers that were at the base to create this mass of sucker growth, which again are all off the rootstock, to then select from the various branches and graft upon it. Right now this looks like a mess, but in fact there's 3 solid grafts within here, again being the peach, plum, and apricot that are grafted upon that rootstock. Again, this here is the original tree. You can see height-wise, we're just about a foot, maybe a foot and a half away from the height, but we're going to clean this up in this video. Within the next 5 to 10 minutes, we're going to see the 3 grafts standing alone. All of this other sucker growth is going to be removed, so the entire energy of the rootstock is going to go into that scion wood, or that selected flavor of fruit tree that'll then continue growing for the remainder of the growing season, with the goal of hopefully enjoying some fruit next year, but guaranteed fruit within 2 years. To get started, let me share with you the first of the 3 grafts, being the apricot. If you come in a little closer, what you'll see, and what we've done pretty much, is we've got this container apricot secured by the stake to make sure it stays in this position, grafted onto the plum rootstock at this point down here. If you come in a little closer, you can see we have since coated it with the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 plant guard. When we initially did the graft, we simply used this fishing twine, and after about 3 to 4 weeks we removed the fishing twine and then replaced it with something thicker in just 2 locations, being below the graft and above the graft. We use this nylon string, which you're going to see now. If you come in a little closer, we have that nylon tie at the top of the graft and the nylon tie at the below the graft. You can see it has since swollen quite a bit, and I'm going to try to give you a better view. And then we coated it with the 3-in-1 Ivory Organics plant guard, which is this product over here. Ivory Organics 3-in-1 plant guard protection from damaging sunburn, insects, and rodents, with the primary goal this time is to basically seal it, since it's a wound, a grafting wound, to make sure insects and disease don't enter that area. Registered material for use in organic agriculture, and the active ingredients I just want to quickly share that help accomplish this is castor oil, cinnamon, clove, garlic, peppermint, rosemary, and spearmint oils. So what we're going to do is now remove the scion wood, which is this grafted apricot, from the plum that is down below. And the way we're going to do this, and here you can see that the rootstock is this part of the plant right here. You can see this is a plum variety root, and what we're going to do is continue removing the sucker growth below the graft, because we want to make sure that the rootstock is supporting the grafted wood. So we're going to remove all of that, working our way all the way down carefully, and being careful not to cut the actual rootstock. So this is our rootstock going up to now the graft over here. What we're going to now do is remove the grafted apricot, which we did through the approach graft. This is now going down the apricot trunk down to its own container where it's on its own root. Today we're going to sever that together. What we're going to do now is take our razor blade here and our pruners, and we're simply now going to prune. What we did 3 weeks ago, again, aside from adding the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 plant garden and adding the ties, was we removed the top of the rootstock that was growing over here. So this was originally plum coming off of this. We pruned that off about 3 weeks ago to encourage all of the vascular tissues to start growing in this direction. And since then, you can see that it continued swelling. And here you can see that the plum is on this side, the apricot on that side. And what we're going to do now is carefully prune the apricot away from the plum, like so. And now for the first time ever, the apricot is resting on the plum rootstock right in there. You can see the plum leaves down below. Here's the plum leaf, and now we've got apricot leaves. And now what we can do with this container is we can remove it now from its supporting stake. Let's carefully remove the ties. And this can now come out, and this can be an apricot that can now be planted on another side or used for other grafting tissues at another location. But I actually have a friend where we're going to plant this apricot tree, and you can see that they're going to get to enjoy this apricot, whereas I just simply took an inch or two off of it to create my own apricot, genetically identical onto the rootstock that we've created here behind us. What I want to share with you also is now the stress test. I'm going to basically repeat that pattern around, and I'll give you just a quick sneak peek with each of those, being the peaches and the plum that we've also grafted behind it. But with the stress test, what I want to do is simply take a piece of the apricot like so, and what I'm going to do is attach it to a stake like so. And what we're going to do is simply take our twine here and secure it to the stake. And what we're going to do is we're going to see how the branch is going to stress, being that it's not connected to any plant tissues, none of the vascular tissues. The underlying the bark is something known as the cambium tissues, which have these vessels known as xylem and phloem, which transport the waters and sugars and minerals throughout the plant. Being that it's not connected, it's expected this is going to dry out and begin to wilt. However, this over here, we don't expect the plant to wilt at all, as the vascular tissues between the underlying plum and the above apricot should have become one. This grafted apricot, on the other hand, being that the vascular tissues have become one, we don't expect any wilting to occur at all if we've done this right. However, if the vascular tissues maybe have accomplished some fusion but not complete, there may be some stress going on. We're going to address that in just a second. We're going to see how this is going to react first as I continue removing the grafts surrounding the plant. So let's get on to the next graft. So the next thing we're going to do is now sever the peach scion wood from its own root as well. And again, the peach container is over here. Here's the trunk of the plant, and it's grafted at this particular location over here. If you take a look, you can see that the graft, you can see the wound between the peach and the plum has healed quite well. And what we're going to do, again, what I want to share with you is you can see over here there's some sucker growth happening right behind the graft. You're going to want to make sure that all of the sucker plum growth is removed so that all of the energy from below the graft down is directed into the peach graft. And you can see how these leaves are quite unique, being that they're elongated compared to the apricot leaves over here, which are quite round. So we're going to have round leaves, elongated leaves, and then over here we're going to have the plum variety, which we're going to share last. But now what we're going to do again is we're going to now prune. And what I want to share with you as well is what we've done is we've notched, and you're going to see, I'm going to share with you the earlier video that we did a few weeks ago. We've notched at the very bottom of it to also stress the peach into encouraging it to grab into the vascular tissues of the plum. We did that about 3 weeks ago. It has since begun to callus. Again, coated in the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 plant guard, and since the plant has expanded almost twice as much, and that's why there's a lot of exposed plant tissues. But here we go now, cutting and severing the peach like so. And now we can remove the container, and out comes the peach. And if you can come back, you can see here is now the peach graft. We've removed the top of the plum variety, which was growing off of on this side. So here we removed the top, and then now the peach top we removed from its roots at this point. And now we're going to remove all the sucker growth of the plum to encourage all of the growth from this rootstock to support now this grafted scion wood. And we're going to leave these ties on for about another probably a week, maybe a month, until we see even more growth and a little bit more expansion. But we've got to be careful with those nylon ties that we also don't constrict the underlying cambium tissues, which will hinder growth and also affect the health of that particular graft. So we got to be careful with that. So far we've got now 2 grafts. We've done the apricot and the peach, and now let's check out the plum. So here we are now removing the plum graft from the plum rootstock. We've got 2 different varieties of plum grafted onto one another. And if you take a look over here, you can see again, the rootstock, we removed the top of it, right, that was coming off of this area about 3 weeks ago. What you can see since we've done that is it's pushed out all of this sucker growth to the right. We're going to remove it as we want, again, the rootstock to support the grafted plum, which is right here on my left side or on your right side. And now what we're going to do is, again, remove this sucker growth, which anything below that graft union that is not of the graft needs to be removed to make sure that none of the resources that are being pumped into this growth is taken away from the actual graft. And you can see clearly here that the graft tissues have since expanded since we applied the 3-in-1 plant guard. And you can see there's a very good union between the cambium tissues between these 2 plants. Very good expansion happening pretty much all the way around. And again, we'll leave these ties on for about another week to another month before we remove it. And here you've got a clear bird's eye view of the notch that was made, again, 3 weeks ago. It has since calloused over. Again, this notch was added. It was cut about halfway into the stem of the grafted variety of plum. That was, again, created to stress the graft and to encourage it to hold on to the vascular tissues of the rootstock and to prepare to let go of its own rootstock. So that's what we're going to do right now by pruning it right there. And now we've got the grafted plum onto the plum rootstock, and this is our 3rd and final graft. What we're going to do now is, as we've done with the others, remove the tree. And now all of these grafts are resting onto the rootstock. What we have in between all of these successful grafts is some sucker growth, but I'm going to leave that here for just a few minutes longer. I'm just waiting for about another 30 minutes to an hour to pass, so we can then do what I call the stress test of grafting to determine if we in fact have success. Take a look at what's happened so far to the apricot that we've attached to the stake. You can see that there's quite a bit of substantial wilting going on, which is expected. And take a look over here at the apricot that was pruned just before we removed this apricot. But as you can see, the apricot has not wilted at all. It's still holding perfect form and shape, and we expect to see the same hopefully with the peach, as we'll see with our most recent graft that we've just severed from its own root with this particular plum variety as well. So once I see success, that's when I'm going to remove all of the other sucker growth, and then we're going to straighten out these branches to basically control and shape the plant for a successful future. So we're going to return to this in about the next 20 to 30 minutes. That'll bring us closer to an hour, and I'm going to share the results with you. So here we are now. It's been about an hour since we began what I call the graft test. Once the approach graft has been severed from its own root and it's now resting on the selected root stock, what I like doing is running a graft test to the side just to see how a similar branch would react under similar conditions without any of the vascular tissues having united or in fact grafted. And even if there is some graft, there still may be a stress that otherwise may not be evident for the next day or two, but this is a quick test just to see how well in fact you're doing. So let's revisit first the apricot. if you come in a little closer, check out the condition of the apricot leaves here. Here we are, about an hour later, still looks about the same. If we take a look here at the peach with the elongated leaves, this is what makes it look unique compared to everything else that's growing down here. Peach seems to be in good condition. And this here is the grafted variety of plum right here in the front, right there. And this too appears to be doing quite well. Compared to, if we take a look on this side over here, we can see that the apricot, which we did together, we've attached to the top of the stake. Again, it's not connected to anything, nor is it sitting in any water. You can see has completely lost its form as it's become wilted. And then over here, I saw another branch of one of the plum rootstocks that we also pruned off. And you can see that it too is also being severely wilted as well. And take a look at the tip, which is the most sensitive. You can see it otherwise be in the upright position, but without it being connected, or at least in water, it's completely wilted as well. Just to remind you again, we're now in the middle and approaching the end of July. It's about an 85-degree day here in Los Angeles, California. I'm breaking a bit of a sweat here. And so you can imagine within about an hour, the fact that these grafts are still holding position in perfect condition, I'm thrilled. I know I've accomplished success. If this is what your graft is looking like, and again, this is a stress test, I want to give you a couple of tips to hopefully help you revive and bring those grafts to life, as I've done so in the past. And again, so if this is something I was seeing happening to something I grafted down below, this is how I would save it. The first thing I would do, if you want to come in a little closer, and let's deal with the apricot that we have here on the top. The first thing I would do is cut it in half. If you've got a long apricot branch that you've grafted, it may just be too much on a new wound, the wound being the graft union. And you'd want to just keep it somewhere shorter, maybe 2 inches, maybe 4 inches. But the first thing I'm going to do, just as a general tip, is cut it in half. So as much as we've got as plant tissue here, I'm just going to cut it down to the next nearest node. If you can see over here, here's our leaf node, and we're simply going to cut it about 1/4 of an inch above the leaf node, like so. A second thing I'm going to do also to further revive and make sure that this graft union doesn't completely dry out is I'm going to take these leaves and cut them in half. I'm not going to remove them, as the leaves are vital towards making the sugars and the proteins and the nutrients. And again, I want to trick the underlying rootstock to support this approach graft union. So we'd want to keep some of these leaves alive, so at least it's creating some of the value to the overall health and success of the plant. So in return, hopefully that rootstock will further create the vascular tissues and support necessary for pushing out new shoots and growth at that graft union. So what we're going to do again is just continue going all the way around, cutting each of the leaves in half, thereby reducing the surface area and creating a much cooler plant. Another good practice is to also use a foliar spray that'll help create a cooler plant. Whenever you're transplanting your plants, whether they be tomatoes, peppers, or even trees that you're planting in the ground, it's a good idea to basically protect the entire plant. This here I'm using is the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 Plant Guard Ready to Use Spray, protection against damaging sunburn, insects, and rodents. The primary goal here is we're trying to create a cooler plant, so the primary function that we're trying to gain is protection from sunburn. And what I can do now is simply spray the entire structure like so, and what we've created, if you can see, is we've got a little light organic white sunblock that's going to reflect some of those excess rays and ultimately protect the underlying leaf tissues better than without protection. And all of these products, this here again is the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 Plant Guard. It's pretty much the same product between the ready-to-use spray and the can. Again, here are the brush-on directions, is filling up the can with water. As a foliar spray, 1 can make up to 5 gallons of the foliar spray, so this is your helpful tip. And for your tree paste directions, you can add 1/4 cup of water to end up with about 1/3 of a can or 1/4 of a can of tree paste to basically protect your graft wounds, and if there's any larger tree damage, you'd otherwise need a tree paste. It also works on your roses as well. Let's read that again together. If you see over here, for use on your roses, fruit, nut trees, ornamental trees, and shrubs. Since the primary goal is protection from the sun and to create a cooler structure, and not necessarily protection from insects and rodents, there's this product over here, the Ivory Organics Whitewash Formula, protection against damaging sunburn and winter sun scald. So this here does not have the added 7 oils. which will give you that cooler structure. It'll still accomplish the benefits of whitewashing by protecting your plants during the coldest parts of winter, as well as protecting your plants from the extremes of summer as well. Or if you're also doing any summer pruning, typically following your fruit harvest, and you have an open canopy, the protection of whitewashing will also serve that function as well. When again, the goal is to create a cooler plant structure, you can accomplish that as well. Now that we know that we have grafting success, what I'm going to do is remove the rest of the suckers. I've left them all the way until the end, just in case I wanted to graft more upon it. But now this is the time to remove the suckers and reshape the tree for maximal success to enjoy for the years to come. So let's go and do that together. So now that we've accomplished, and we're confident that we've accomplished the approach grafting success to the rootstock of the plum tree, what we're going to do is now remove the remaining plum suckers from around the plant. So I'm going to carefully do that now. So we've just removed all of the sucker growth. One of the last steps now is to basically secure the branch and pull them from the center. The goal is to basically have branches all growing in their own separate zone to capitalize on sunlight, to maximize the amount of sun reaching each of the individual leaves, to ultimately support the maximum number of flowers and fruits for the many years to come. To do so, the goal is to create a vase shape and basically, again, treating each of the branches as if they're their own tree, even though they're all on the same root. And the way we've done that is I've got these 3 stakes in position. I've tied some string to each of them. And again, you want to be careful not to put a knot against the tree trunk, against the plants, as that is going to be constricting to the growth. The goal is to put the knot onto the stake, and then you're simply going to wrap the twine around the branch, and now you can pull it into the desired zone, like so. So here we've got the apricots. Here we're going to pull the peach back into its growing zone, like so. And you can see the peach and the plum, these 2 varieties are kind of on top of one another, but we're going to correct that right now. And then we'll secure this one as well, like so. And we'll pull that back. And if you come in a little closer now, you'll see that we've got 1, 2, 3 plum branches supporting the grafts of this variety of plum, this variety of apricot, this variety of peach, on top of 1 rootstock. And again, being that the branches are lower and the goal is to have the prune, you can see all of these sucker growth that I've pruned to prevent me from having to do this year after year. I'm going to come a little closer and prune it closer to where those branches are, so as these branches heal and expand, it'll heal over the wound. But right now this is going to result in a knob. I'm going to try to come in a little closer now that it's been all cleaned up and prune it a lot closer, like so. Got to be careful not to damage the branch behind it, otherwise I'm going to lose one of my 3 grafts. And here it goes. And when you see what I'm talking about, I came pretty close to this particular branch, but I'm okay. This wound will heal over. What we're going to do next is we're going to go with the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 Plant Guard and now seal this entire wound. Here we are now taking the 3-in-1 Plant Guard. The primary protection again is sunburn against now this exposed heartwood or the center of the wood, and also from insects. We don't want insects and disease now entering this exposed surface. So instead of using something like a tar or a latex paint, which is going to have a shelf life, a half-life, which is the time it's going to take to decay, tar and paint will take decades to break down and will rest in your soil for a very long time, whereas this, being all organically derived, as well as over here, registered material for Eastern Organic Agriculture, is a safer alternative that's non-toxic, environmentally safe, and an organic product that can be used to now seal the wound like so. If there's any exposed branches, let's just remove a couple of the leaves. This is something we're gonna do in the weeks and months to come, but I want to demonstrate this point now. You can see we've got all of this tissue exposed to in the summer, 14 hours of daylight. That's a long day. We're going to end up protecting it from sunburn like so as well. Anyways, that was a lot of helpful tips. I hope you found this informative and educational. So we did accomplish grafting success with these 3 what's known as the Prunus family of trees. And we're going to continue adding more varieties of fruits to this particular plant, all from the same genus of fruit trees in the upcoming months and years to follow. So be sure to subscribe and follow. And if you haven't already hit that push bell notification next to the subscribe button, please do so now. So if you've done a YouTube video or you have other social media where you've demonstrated the value of Ivory Organics within your garden, we'd love to see that. Please share it with us at info@ivorganics.com. Again, thanks for watching and wishing you all happy gardening.